Hello, everyone. Welcome to Therapy Cove. Today is a very special episode. We're going to be talking about love and relationships, specifically in the South Asian family diaspora. I have my fellow colleague here, Navreen. Navreen is a registered clinical counselor, and I'm so excited to talk all about relationships with you today.
Thank you so much, Amrita, for having me. And I'm so excited too to talk about this.
Yeah, I think we're really going to be able to have a healthy dialogue just about some of the stuff that we see oftentimes in client meetings. There's certain themes and patterns, I feel like, and I don't do couples therapy, but it's my understanding that you do.
I do.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I feel like even just from seeing your content online, I've learned so much, and there's so much value to gain from each other. And I just have seen some stuff that really resonated with me, and then it kind of sparked my mind that, hey, this is a worthwhile conversation. Yeah. So just to start off, maybe just sharing, like in your practice, what are some common challenges that you feel like South Asian couples can face?
I think to begin with, one of the biggest one I see couples facing is living in multi-generational homes and how
Okay.
to navigate the in-laws dynamic.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would say a bigger one is how to handle when you come from different family systems. How to
Yes.
handle when one of you is coming from a very modern,
Yeah.
westernized kind of mindset, and the
Yeah.
other person's coming from a very traditional mindset. I'm
Yeah.
not saying either or
Yeah.
is better or worse, but
Yeah.
how do you navigate that? It's
Yes.
very natural to fall in love with someone and
Yeah.
not realize, oh, we come from very different families. So
Totally.
how are we navigating that?
Hmm.
The third and the biggest one I feel like is balancing West and East for us.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
especially with my practice, I
Yeah.
don't take sides, or I
Yeah.
also like work around a thing that we're not taking sides that,
Hmm.
okay, West is better or traditional values aren't
Yeah.
better. Well,
Yeah.
how are we finding that sweet little spot to balance everything?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
balancing is the art, I feel like. And these are few things I feel like a lot of South Asian couples deal with.
Yes, I totally see that even in individual therapy. And it's such a great point you make that sometimes it's not this or that. There's duality.
Yeah,
There's value to being both ways. And a lot of times, maybe one family system can have a set of values that are one way. And because it's not really rivaj or tradition for us to live together before marriage, we don't get that insight until we're actually in the family system.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it's a different ball game. So let's say if something like that is coming up, what are some techniques or strategies that you would introduce, be it communication styles, be it maybe like a values exploration? What's something that you find handy to just kind of get the ball rolling with getting them both on the same page?
I think the first and the foremost thing I always realize when couples are coming in
Yeah.
into couples therapy, especially coming from a South Asian point of view, is they need to learn how to communicate. It's
Hmm.
okay to have different opinions, but
Yes.
it's important to know how to communicate.
Yes.
And the thing I top it up with, do you know how to fight?
Ah,
And
interesting. Yeah.
whenever the couples come, like, did you ever learn how to fight? They're
Huh.
like, what is she talking about? I
Yeah.
can sense that's their first thought,
Yeah.
right? Like, who teaches you to fight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
majority of the times, even if you
Yeah.
go by, I'm not sure how much you can actually relate, but
Huh.
stonewalling and silent treatments were the only ways we were
Yes.
displayed or role model that someone's
Hmm.
angry or
Yeah.
someone's upset,
Yeah. They
and
go
then
quiet.
children learn that.
Yeah.
So when those children have now become adults and they're
Yeah.
living in their own family,
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't know how to communicate. They
Yes.
don't know how I should display that I am upset.
Yeah.
So the passive aggressiveness comes in. You know,
Hmm.
mostly someone's washing dishes, so pande marne jor ki, or darwaja, you're like slamming the door.
Yeah.
You're doing stuff like that to tell the other person you're upset, and then your
Yes.
kids are watching, so you're just passing it on.
100%. These are such key things you're mentioning that it's learned behaviors. Jo ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਆ, whatever ਸਾਡੇ ਮੋੜੇ ਹੋਇਆ, how our ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ interacted with us or how our ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ interacted with each other, that's the program we enter marriage with. And sometimes we don't even realize how much of our mom is in us, how much of
Yeah.
our dad's
Yeah.
atta are in us,
Yeah.
until we're in those stressful situations. I even think about what you're saying in regard to like throwing dishes or slamming doors. From a somatic lens, where my brain goes is the coon goes into your heart, right?
Yes.
When you're reactive, when you're in
Yeah.
that fight, flight,
Yeah.
freeze. So naturally, you just need to release the emotion somehow. But you're saying you start off by just opening that dialogue of, hey, what's fair fighting rules? What's the
Totally.
healthy way to go about
Healthy
it?
way to fight, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're like, oh, we're gonna learn healthy ways to fight, they're like, okay, whatever, it's just another healthy thing we're learning. But when you
Yeah.
actually use some of those like hook lines and you're like, do you know how to fight?
Yeah.
It's
Captivating.
yeah, and they're like, okay, I'm interested, tell me
Yeah.
more, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how probably I try to see if that kind of resonates with my clients.
That's so key. What a fundamental aspect. So, in addition to like fair fighting and communication, what are some other things that you feel like are key factors in a healthy relationship?
I think one of the major ones is understanding the worldview around marriage,
Oh, yeah.
especially when we talk about South Asian diaspora.
Yeah.
Marriage is seen as responsibility.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors and thoughts and facts that come to your head when I say the word marriage, you know?
Yeah.
So I have the couple kind of do like an activity kind of thing where I say, whatever pops to your head when I say marriage,
Oh, okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of tells me where both of them are sitting.
Yes.
Like, what is their worldview around it, you know?
Amazing.
Because you're coming from different families, you've seen different kind of marriages. So what are you coming into the relationship with? You know you want to build a marriage,
Yeah.
but a husband's coming in with a different viewpoint and the wife's coming in with a different viewpoint.
Yes.
Where are we meeting?
Yes.
So we're not building reactiveness. Oh no, I'm right, you're wrong. We're building a new system.
Yeah.
So finding what values align, what don't align. So, you know, just doing more of the psychoed with my South Asian folks.
Nice.
Before I step into actual counseling with them is something I approach.
Makes sense. Just kind of making that foundation. I feel like even as you're speaking, because this isn't my forte, I'm having so many head cannons go off where I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's relevant even to myself. Because, I feel like every female will enter marriage and that union with a certain list of expectations and norms and ideas. And sometimes it is heavily influenced and formed from media, from Bollywood and Hollywood and the fairy tales, right? So it's very glamorized. The glitz and the glam of it all is very appealing. And it's a high value in our family systems. It's a lot of jado tera byah hoya, idda, idda. So we're kind of programmed. And then for a male, perhaps it's a different set of definitions in terms of what is a husband, what is a wife, and the expectations is a lot different. The energy that each individual is entering the union with, it can be very different. It can be apples and oranges. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Do you feel like sometimes you have couples come into your office where you see that they're speaking two different languages, or they have a completely different mindset when it comes to how they define marriage even?
I think most of the times I do see like North and South when they come in and talk about marriage and their worldview around marriage.
Totally.
And I think I usually start with, hey, we're here to build a connection between you two.
Yeah.
How do you think we can do that?
Yes.
You know, finding out that point where we can come together. Maybe there's one aligned value they both have.
Cool.
You know, starting with that and building up from there.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work, and I always appreciate my South Asian folks who come in knowing, you know, because again, if we go back to the culture, it's a common practice. Baddiyanu bichu bathalo, you know, whenever you're having a problem. So if it's going to be like the girl's parents, they're going to be more inclined towards saying our daughter's right. Absolutely. But whenever we're talking about the guy's parents, they'll be like, our son's right.
Yes.
So who's that non-biased?
Yeah. Excellent point.
Right?
It's a practitioner.
Yeah. So mostly they're like, oh, मैं तैनू क्या सी आपां बड्डियां नू विच बिठा के ठीक कर लन्ने आ, you know. I see most of the women actually encouraging coming to counseling over men. That's what
it's
my
more normalized.
trend in my sessions have been.
Makes
But
sense.
I've seen men liking it, and they kind of feel like that the shame part,
Yeah.
ਬਾਹਰ ਦੱਸਦੀ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ. So that kind of goes away.
Right, because they start to trust that this is a
This
safe
is
space.
Working. Yes.
Yeah, they see the value in it. And even what comes to mind is like you're working with relationships, but sometimes does it then segue into their own individual traumas and their own past? Do you ever see that come up?
Yeah, I would say again, it goes down to what kind of family did they grow up in.
Yeah,
I think a lot comes from there, especially a lot of times when one of the partners has grown up in India and the other has grown up in a Punjabi household, but in Canada.
Yeah.
Those are some of the common things that I worked with.
Fair.
Sometimes both of the folks are born and raised in Canada, but to immigrant parents. Some immigrant parents had a different lifestyle, had a different mindset when they left India. Some had a different one. So how are we aligning? Understanding the first and foremost thing is we're not saying one side is better. We're making a new thing for you.
You're trying to find the middle ground, the gray area. It's not black and white.
It's not
right or wrong. It's just a blending is what I'm capturing from you.
It is. Rather than focusing that on right or wrong, which I see like a lot of it comes up in the session. मैं सही हूं, तू गलत है, or तेरे parents गलत है. We're not going to गलत or सही.
It's like not the blame game. That's not the task at hand.
If I draw a 6 here, it's going to be a 9 for you.
Oh wow, perspective.
You know, so and before that, I'm going back to my sessions as we're talking. What's a fact and what's an opinion? Just kind of differentiating between that. And learning to accept other person's opinion.
Right. This is all valid points, and what I'm understanding from you here is you start with laying the groundwork. You start with the foundation and you're like, let's just get on the same page. Right? Because you can't like build the whole building without first pouring the cement and getting that solid base in. And sometimes because of cultural trends and what's been normalized and what's been modeled to us, that foundation isn't naturally there. We have to develop it. But sometimes, perhaps you've seen this, there's been big ruptures. There's been big issues within a relationship, let's say infidelity, or let's say there's maybe one partner has an anger problem, one partner has a mood dysregulation problem. Then how would you navigate it? Does that become a different ball game, or do you feel like you approach it with a similar energy?
I would say I try to explore within the couple session because again, we know like mood dysregulation, anger, they're all secondary emotions, right? There's most of the times there's a lot of shame, hurt, and guilt that's lying underneath anger. So how can the partner or that person themselves address it? Encouraging them to work on that by themselves in their individual therapy, and also helping the other partner, how can you not trigger them, kind of thing. I'm not saying per se it's their responsibility to be that, oh, I'm going to make sure I don't hurt them, but how can you support them in their healing process for a while?
Right.
How can you be a supportive partner? What kind of support do you actually need? It also starts with I'm getting reminded a lot of my work is very attachment focused. So understanding what's your partner's attachment style. And very basic, our South Asian folks usually are not aware about it. Love languages.
Yep, absolutely. How are you showing love? Well, how are you showing up first? How are you attaching? And then after that, what's your style of communicating your care and attachment to this person? I feel like I personally feel that maybe most South Asian females are anxious attachment, and maybe South Asian males veer towards avoidant attachment. Would you say that's what you notice as well, or does it vary quite a bit?
I would say 8 out of 10. I would agree with you. There are patterns where I've seen complete opposites. But that's the more generalized answer I can give.
This is neat to
yeah,
hear.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I would address the anger, mood dysregulation, or anything that a person is bringing from their past into the relationship.
Fair.
To how can we separate that from relationship? I know we cannot take it out, but how can we learn to put it separate? How is your guilt affecting your relationship? How is your hurt affecting your relationship?
Yeah.
Is there a layer of shame you're holding?
Yes.
Because a lot of times shame and guilt are role model to you.
Yeah, it comes from those original formative years.
Yeah.
And I once saw this artwork. It was like two wire statues, and those are the adult selves, and they're facing back to back, and they've kind of got their head in their hands. And then within the wire statues was two little children trying to press their hands into one another within each individual.
Yeah.
And it made me really view a lot of couples in that manner, especially when there's been intergenerational trauma, especially when there's been a lot of childhood trauma, just what's the norm for being a second generation immigrant, the parent of an immigrant, right? All these things factor in. So a lot of times there's inner child wounds. There's so much that we're carrying. We've got like this dechi with us when we're going to get married, right? And that dechi is full of all these unaddressed things because the dialogue's not there. It's not normalized to go heal and embark on that journey. And often it takes like that big kind of catalyst moment where something's gone sideways, something's gone awry, and then you start unpacking that dechi. And how do you kind of navigate that if like you're like, whoa, okay, I'm seeing there's a lot of background stuff. Do you then suggest that each party goes and gets some individual counseling sessions under their belt before they come together? What do you usually suggest?
I wouldn't say before per se. Maybe alongside as we're doing the work, because one thing I really stand by and tell my clients, you don't go to the gym one day and you have abs, and you don't eat junk one day and you gain 10 kilos. Similarly, you won't come to therapy for one day and you feel like everything gets better.
Excellent
it's
analogy.
It's a work in progress. And it's not like you can stop eating junk and
overnight
and
quick
then
fix. There's no magic
no magic happening. And it's not like you can be like, oh, I did 6 sessions and I'm fine. It can come up. So it's a work in progress. We might do weekly right now, but we might go to every monthly, or three after 3 months. So it's just a work in progress. First, actually helping them build a positive relationship to therapy. To be able to embrace that I'm in therapy, just the way they would say, I am taking a diet, or I am taking a fitness class,
It's
when
a
they
mind
have to
gym.
hide all of that is when comes up.
Because then it's doubling down on the shame, like you mentioned. That shame is such a core wound that's there for so many reasons, and then it just gets added to, and then you're going to see more maladaptive behaviors, more poor decision making, more ruptures and hurts occur within the union. So that absolutely makes sense. One of the analogies that I like when speaking about attachment styles is, and I think every therapist has their own style and their own thought process as to how they approach relationships. But I always say your most important relationship is the one with yourself. So we should be securely attached within ourselves, to ourselves, and then whatever's the excess is what you go give to your partner. So kind of visualizing a milkshake, the milkshake should be full on its own. The whipped cream and cherry on top is the extra. That's what your partner is giving you.
Totally.
And do you feel like that aligns with your values in terms of how you approach relationships and love and marriage as well? Or do you think that's a little bit of a like hyper independent mindset? Because sometimes I feel that I suggest and promote the idea of decentering romantic partnerships from your life, and that there should be a diversified source of happiness for you. It shouldn't just be like you're hanging your hat on your partner, like, okay, make me happy. Do you feel like that's an appropriate mindset, or do you feel like that's a little too hyper independent? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it again goes back to the balance piece I talked about. There's a lot of words that are coming to my head right now as I just heard you talk. Codependency. Understanding what's healthy dependency and what's not healthy.
Got it.
What's anxiously attaching and what's caring for your partner. A person with anxious attachment style might come off as controlling, clingy, overprotective, and the other person might confuse them for
like in a mesh.
Yeah, you know. So understanding this part, that what's something your partner's giving you that makes you happy, can you give it to yourself?
Yes.
You know, so
cool.
just kind of
good formula.
The analogy I give them is, you know how those headphones were when like 10 years ago or something, the wired ones. And if you would kind of take them off, put them in the pocket, they would get all like
I still use those,
right? So you always have to take them out and then unsort them and then put them in.
Yes.
That's how you kind of do with your thoughts around relationship. How are we sorting them? You're two different people. No doubt you're connected, you know, but you still need to have your own.
You gotta do your own work.
Just
you gotta
the way
make your own happy.
You wouldn't be okay if you're listening more from one of the headphones. You're like bugged sometimes. So I need to have that balance.
Excellent analogy.
You know, so that's my favorite piece. How they can understand that we need to be fine and balanced on our own.
Yes.
You know, and then still be connected.
That's neat. I feel like I'm learning so much. There's so much value in what you're saying, because sometimes I feel like it's really easy to be one extreme or the other when it comes towards your mentality towards relationships. Like, no, it should be fairy tale, happily ever after. It's going to be Cinderella and Prince Charming. And then very quickly that expectation unravels. And then it's really easy to maybe then go the other extreme and completely withdraw and be hyper independent and feel very pessimistic in regard to what does this marriage mean? What is the value of a relationship in my life? So I like how you're saying, you know what, it's not this or that. There's a dual connection here. Find the balance.
So even like hyper independence, I wonder, like, if somebody is wanting to practice that, why do you need so much of hyper independence? Like,
how's it making you feel safe? What are you
like,
protecting yourself from?
Independence is so important for you.
Yes.
You know, sometimes that independence is coming from lack of safety.
Fair.
So addressing that layer over going somewhere else is something I start with. Or
cool. So you're saying, you know what, there's also these key fundamental basic needs. We all need to feel safe. We all need to feel accepted, like we belong, like we're loved. And sometimes those boxes are left unchecked in childhood, because typically speaking, South Asian parents tend to be more focused on the other types of needs being met, like food, shelter, water, and then some of the emotional stuff gets left by the wayside. And then we have this yearning and we're like, okay, my partner's going to do it for me. My partner's going to give me those things. But sometimes if they haven't experienced that either, they can't give what they don't have.
You know what, this also reminds me of a very common trend I hear a lot of South Asian women talking about. To travel is a big thing. To travel karna vyah to baat kar li.
Right. Like,
तो कुड़ियां ना रात ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਾ, like, you know, go with your banda. So the parents are already setting up that female or the wife that hey, I am going to expect all of this from my husband.
Okay, that he's the authority.
Authority, and also like that's where he's going to fulfill my needs.
Right, the key to your real life starting.
Right? Oh, I want to wear these type of clothes. There are still a lot of families are saying, oh, go do this when you're like,
so
they're kind of making a worldview around the bia, like, oh,
it's the focal point.
But when a lot of individual clients I work with women, you know, and they have trouble finding, because sometimes men are very highly secured, and they're wanting someone to build a life with, have a very safe kind of relationship, and they see these women who have these expectations, it kind of puts them at a place where they're like, maybe something's wrong with me, you know?
Right. So, it's the gender roles maybe come into play. Like sometimes it can be the other way, where the male it's been normalized for him to be the authority, to be the alpha male, to be the dominant figure. And then maybe a woman has, like you said right at the beginning, grown up in a family system where she did have her voice, she did have freedom. And then all of a sudden, when she gets married, it feels like she's regressing. This is another thing that's been coming up a lot lately in therapy, is the whole getting married aspect. It can suddenly feel like you're going backwards in life. And that can be very jarring and traumatic. And what would you say to speak to that? Like maybe the woman is not necessarily married yet, but she's just about treading into that territory, and she's starting to get some warning signs that, hey, this family might not match up to what I'm used to.
Absolutely. And the basic part there is like, are you wanting to get married because you want to get married, or is it something that's your family's pressure?
Yeah.
And if you're the one who's decided, yes, I want to get married, what do you want to get married for?
Yes.
So understanding
what's the
appeal. Sometimes the appeal, and you'd be shocked, Amrita, or maybe not, because you work with a lot of clients. It's just that suits, lengas, designers, chura, and they don't have
the glitz and the glam. Instagram.
So Instagram, TikTok,
it's
this
exciting.
decor,
Dopamine
this photographer. That's it. And 2 years of that stressful wedding planning, and it's like all boring, and I don't know what to do. Now we're married. What? So
it's a big climax, and then you have only one direction to go after that. Sometimes, not all the time.
But
I wholeheartedly agree. And you know what? I'll even admit that appa bhi aida hi si. Right? I got married at 24, which in today's day and age maybe is considered kind of young, right? Now I think about it, my frontal lobes weren't even fully developed, right? So but yeah, of course, the lenga and the music and the decor, it's captivating, it's exciting, it gives you a lot of happiness, adrenaline, and so naturally you're going to become hyper attached to that. And it's what's the societal norm, so it is hard to kind of then be against the grain and think differently. But I feel like I'm seeing it more and more with the newer generations. Like they're not as absorbed with it as maybe my generation and former was. What are your thoughts?
No, I think I definitely do agree with you. I think there are a lot of like polar ends. Coming to a place where you're like trying to balance is very rare that I see. People go into the marriage thinking, nope, what I'm saying is right. They're not open to accepting. So even when you're talking about the regressing mindset, something that might feel regressing to you is a part of accommodating in a relationship. Not everything's going to be your way. But then again, females do consider and connected with men ਨੂੰ adjust करना पैना, मैं कुड़ियां sacrifice करती
That's a big line.
So understanding how all those layers are separate, or are you trying to just enmesh everything together?
Yes, I feel like sometimes it's like there's a line. So perhaps there's adaptability, and there's being a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. And then sometimes we can teeter into those hurts and wounds where it's like, oh, that's sexism, or oh no, this is borderline emotional or verbal abuse. And when that's in the narrative, then how do you approach that? Let's say it's happening within a joint family system, or even if they're not living together, we're a collectivist culture, we have a lot of gatherings, we're always kind of in each other's lives. And let's say if those things are occurring, then what comes up for you?
I would start with like, what's the point where you started to notice that? Were you even self-aware that you realize it yourself? Or sometimes it's like, my sister told me that my husband talks to me like that in public setting, and it's not right. So how are you kind of understanding that it's not right? So what's your awareness level around is where we start to begin.
Okay, yeah. So just kind of trying to understand like what's fueling this. So just like we were chatting earlier, that our childhood experiences can fuel a lot of it. Sometimes we're displacing emotions onto in-laws that actually belong from earlier experiences, or something's getting magnified in our heart because we've already had and now those bruises are getting poked. But occasionally there can be a lot of conflict. So this is no secret in our South Asian family systems. When it comes to in-laws, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, or whoever it might be, there can be a lot of conflict. And I feel like that dialogue is just about starting now. But let's say if a husband comes to you and he's like, man, I am caught in between my allegiance to my parents and to my partner. What do I do? How would you kind of embark on that dialogue?
It's a very interesting question. And it's so familiar because I get a lot of calls and inquiries around that. I think the first and the foremost part about where we start this is how he approaches the family. Like what is family to you?
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's very small of an issue, but it really comes down to parents having their egos up in the sky, and then the wife's like, no, this was my boundary.
Like definitions,
you know,
their ideas, their generational ideas.
So understanding, sometimes men are like, oh no, I know my wife's right, I know she's doing everything right, but I can't tell my parents that. They'll be upset. So understanding why is that fear there?
Right.
Because that's where
its own issue that's pre-existing, and now this woman coming in has just shined a light on it.
Yeah, because again, traditionally women are expected, nahi ye ta vyah kara ke hogi, ghar jod ke rakhogi.
Right, there's a lot of those expectations. What's the role of a daughter-in-law? Right? So traditionally, perhaps the role is to be obedient, subservient, tolerant, chop, jinna choppa, jinna hasdi rendiya, unna hi vadiya, right? It's in the culture.
Totally. And the biggest one is like, koi nahi to chhad de, tusi chote hain. Like, jiss chote hain, chuk jao. Koi baddiyan ne gal kehti, chalo gal chhad do.
Fir kiya, but that's suppressing.
That's what we say, nikkiyan gallan, you know? We were having a conversation. That's how the nikkiyan gallan add up.
Yes, exactly.
And then 10 years later, when the daughter-in-law is completely like, I am
her
done,
mental health's in
I
shambles.
cannot talk or be around your parents, then it's like, ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਘਰ ਤੋੜ ਦਿਆ।
ਇੰਨੀ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਨਿੱਕੀਆਂ ਨਿੱਕੀਆਂ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੱਡੀ ਬਣਾਈ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, right? So it's a lot of gaslighting, it's a lot of invalidating, minimizing, sweeping things under the rug. But when there's one person who's suffering and another who's a little bit unbothered, then it is really easy to be dismissive. But of course, you know, these things are layered and complex, and nothing occurs in isolation. And again, I always try to come back to that inner child mentality, that even the in-laws, they have their inner child, right? So sometimes they're projecting their wounds and traumas, and it's not malicious intent, it's just a lack of understanding. And perhaps that could even be its own branch of therapy, right? In-law dynamics, and getting them to do the work that you mentioned. Like, oh, what are you guys coming into this with? What are your former definitions of your roles? That's a neat idea.
You're right. I've had couples bring in their in-laws, do family sessions.
Oh, okay.
So I've had a few occasions like that where I've talked about boundaries.
That's so needed in the community. Oh, you chat about boundaries.
So, and whenever they hear the word boundaries, and I tell them, be a limiter. ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਚ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਲਿਮਿਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਜੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ the concept of ਪਰਿਵਾਰ, the concept of family
to them is no boundaries. And open door policy.
Amrita, you'd be shocked. I've heard people having troubles to knock going into their daughter-in-law's room. ਘਰ ਚ ਕਿਹੜਾ knock ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ?
I think I might be wrong, but I think there's no Punjabi word for privacy.
I think there might be, but I'm not getting it.
I just remember learning this like a long time.
Privacy is gupt rakhna kaise cheez, no?
That's not secret, it's privacy.
I think you might be right.
Maybe it's such a foreign concept because it literally hasn't existed. That ijazat is not given to women, right? No locks on the doors in India for bedrooms and all that. So it's an entitlement, and it's a mentality, it's programming, right? So people only know what they know, and they're doing the best with the information they have. But even the fact that they come to you speaks volumes, that they're willing to kind of learn and open their minds, and hopefully you are planting seeds. I would hope so. Just to rewind a little bit, I had this really important question that I don't want to leave out, but I feel like even within our weddings, there's certain traditions and customs that perhaps I'm biased, but I perceive them to be demeaning towards women. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but let's say Namino has to come paddy hat what is it, Jade? Or no, not Jade.
The husband's bigger brother,
yes,
right?
So something like that, or
the big one that comes to my head is giving away of daughter.
Or like the nanan keeps the palla. Like, I guess every area in Punjab, they have their different spin on it. But for me, I feel like these trends and traditions, they have a subtext, they have an undertone, and they're setting the tone for what the dynamic is. And what are your thoughts on that? And have you maybe even seen other norms? Because a lot of people chat about the whole how the bride walks behind the groom, and I have my own thoughts about that. I think it's okay, but I don't think it's because the woman can't defend herself. I think it's because the male's just ready to sacrifice himself more than a woman would.
I think it's again how you see it.
Yeah, you know, subjective interpretation.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
A lot of norms.
Yeah.
And I chat with my dad a lot on these topics, you know, a lot of superstitions too around marriages, around daily life things. Cool. And he always tells me this one thing, and it has sat with me so well.
Yes.
When these things started, they were the need of the hour.
Oh.
But we did
Danger
not evolve.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Yes.
And you know what? The common sentence.
Hey, we gotta have your dad on the podcast. That's pretty neat. I'll call my dad. You call your dad. We'll learn from them.
And sorry, I lost the train of my thought.
No, but Purane Zamane it made sense.
Yeah, Purane Zamane it made so much sense. Yeah. And we did not evolve with it.
Yeah.
And yes, I was gonna say, Sadde ta idda hi hunda.
Yes.
You know, that just line. That line.
Yeah.
It's a trick.
Me too. That's why I had to pause. Yes.
Sadde ta idda hi hunda. What's sadde? You know what?
Like, are we not the sadde? Yes.
You know, so something happening in your family is it's okay to change. You know?
Yeah. Like,
just
let's
the way
also
the Sarbala part too.
Normalize blending. The woman is allowed to bring in value too. It's not we're erasing her brain and her history and now new computer program, Sada program, right? So what were you saying about the Sarvala? Sorry, I interjected.
So even back in the day, so I had this question to my dad a year ago when I got married. I was like, why do you even have a Sarbala? You know, like he's dressed up as the groom.
Yeah.
Everything. And then he sat on the back. Like, okay, your work's done. Go sit back. Like, you know? So back in the day when there would be like Daku, there was danger.
Looting and all that.
But also that's derogatory to the women. Like if you're not getting the groom, you're getting someone.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so these are all things, I guess, as women now who are informed, I'd like to say well informed. Now we have the ample opportunity to maybe choose differently. What Reet the Ravaj are we going to continue because they align with us and they're what we want for our daughters? And what are we maybe going to go, let's just leave that one. Let's just put that aside.
Totally.
Yeah. That's a neat concept. And I love that you brought in that idea too, because yes, it does have to do with, my mom always says, time diya galla hundiya, right? Yeah. So it makes sense, that point that your father made. Just kind of maybe wrapping up here, but of course, before we started recording, we were chatting about the dark side of what all these toxic things can sometimes magnify to, and like the worst case scenario in terms of when there is that mentality, that toxic mentality of ownership over a woman, or the feeling that they're entitled to be abusive. And sometimes, as we have seen recently in the news, there can be very negative, heartbreaking, tragic outcomes to that, where a life is claimed, the daughter-in-law's and the wife's life is claimed. And what are your thoughts as to why is it important to talk about the nikkiyan galla so that generation to generation it doesn't catastrophize into that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think most of the times these nikkiyan galla are happening in front of your kids.
Yes, exactly.
And the kids are watching.
Yeah.
And you're like, nikki ji galla kardi, it's fine. You know?
Yeah.
But you're role modeling to your kids.
Yeah.
What is okay and what is not okay.
Yes. Beautifully said.
What is fine and what's not fine. You're teaching your daughter, hey, this is what you can accept.
Yeah.
And you're teaching your son, hey, this is what you can do.
Yes. It's actually very serious. So, you know, when they say that thing like, it is because things don't start off in that worst evil space.
Totally.
Generation to generation, and let's say there's a little girl watching, and she's watching her mom get tichara and
all those taunts,
demeaned, right? And maybe here and there tamki, or she's being criticized, right? And then now the daughter's bar for what she will tolerate, it's gone higher. And then generation to generation, because then that's the type of mate she will tolerate and accept and what's normalized to her. And generation to generation, it can become this very ugly thing, which is now life-threatening.
It is life-threatening. And then one thing that comes to my mind is whenever daughters go back to their parents, hey, like, I want to come back. Parents think, oh, the marriage is over, the society is going to ruin us, like, dissect our character and everything. I really want to pass this message even through your platform. Your daughter coming back home doesn't mean the marriage is over.
No.
You're just providing a safe space for your daughter to process her own emotions. It's exactly like,
just give her the jaga. Just
let her
it's
be.
Like life jacket tusi kisi nu set nahi hai, right?
Just let her be for a little while.
It doesn't matter, she's gonna hop onto your boat for good. Just give her a life jacket.
Totally. So it's not like you're bringing the daughter back. Daughters are independent.
Don't let it get to that scary space.
Exactly.
And make sure the girl knows she has the haunsla that mere ko aasra hai
gaya.
Mere piche koi khada hai.
What's the parents do is they'll go to the the wife's house, not wife, the daughter's house, or they'll talk to the guy's parents. Hey, like, let's fix this, blah blah blah. They'll all sit together, put it like a panchayat, Nothing comes out of it. It's all arguments.
Too many big emotions. It's a very reactive energy.
They go back, try to demean each other. Let it be for a little while.
Yes. And call a practitioner, right? Call Navreen. Call Navreen. You know what? Honestly, I'm not just saying it. This was such a valuable conversation for me. And I feel like this is exactly why I started doing this, is because there's so much to gain from our peers and our colleagues. And I really, really enjoyed this chat. If you'd be willing, I'd love to do a part 2 because this was brilliant. If you want to share with people how they can get in contact with you, do you prefer like your Instagram or email or phone, if you just want to kind of give your contact?
Sure. They can just call me, connect with me through phone. My phone number is 236-868-6851. And you can mention my website and my Instagram down below.
Perfect. That's
where people can connect.
I'll put that on the screen and in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this. And these dialogues wouldn't have any value or purpose if it wasn't for you guys taking the time to tune in, listen, and watch, and start the dialogue. Have the conversations. Be open to sharing some of this stuff with the older generation. We tried to sprinkle in some Punjabi where we could, and maybe next time we'll do it solely in Punjabi. But I really appreciate you guys watching. As usual, take good care of yourselves. See you next time.